I told myself it was just help. Just boxes. Just a neighbor being kind. And then he touched my wrist just barely, and I forgot how to breathe. It started the way all bad ideas do, with good intentions. We just moved into the new apartment, me, my husband, and the life we'd been patching together for years. New walls, new routines, same cracks underneath. The hallway smelled like fresh paint and someone's burnt toast. The elevator groaned like it hated its job. And I was trying to carry way too many boxes because, of course, he wasn't home. That's when I heard his voice for the first time. Low. Warm. Like someone you've never met but already trust. Need a hand? I looked up. And there he was, gray t-shirt clinging to skin still warm from a run, dark hair damp at the edges, eyes that held a kind of silence I wasn't used to. I laughed. Awkward. Tired. A little embarrassed. Yeah, I probably should have made 2 trips. He smiled. Not just with his mouth, with his whole face. You know what I mean? The kind of smile that makes you feel seen. And suddenly aware of every inch of yourself. He took the top box without asking. Our fingers brushed. Just a second. Just too long. We walked to my door in a silence that felt fuller than conversation. I fumbled with the keys, too aware of him behind me. The heat of his body, the way his breath stayed steady while mine didn't. Inside, the place was a mess of cardboard and furniture that didn't know where it belonged. I set my box down and turned. He was already watching me. Need help unpacking? He said it casually. Like it was nothing. Like this wasn't how people got into trouble. I opened my mouth to say no. I really did. But what came out was, sure. If you don't mind. And that's when he stepped inside. And closed the door behind him. I should have said something. Mentioned my husband. Pointed at the ring. Made it clear. But I didn't. He walked in like he already belonged there. Like he wasn't stepping into someone else's life. And maybe the worst part is, I let him. We moved around each other, unpacking quietly. I handed him plates. He folded packing paper. It was domestic in the way strangers aren't supposed to be. Every now and then our hands would brush. Once his fingers lingered. And I didn't pull away. Is it just you moving in? He asked, voice soft but careful, like he already knew the answer. I hesitated. Swallowed. No, my husband's at work. He nodded. But his eyes didn't change. No surprise. No apology. Just calm. Steady. Like he'd already factored that in. I don't know why I kept watching his mouth when he talked. Or why I felt the air shift every time he moved closer. He smelled like sweat and cologne, like the part of someone they don't show you first. You like it here so far? He asked. I shrugged, sitting on the edge of a half-assembled couch. Yeah. It's quiet. Feels different. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. That shirt clung to him like it was made for moments like this. Different can be good, he said, eyes locked on mine. Sometimes change is exactly what we need. I didn't answer. I couldn't. There was something in the way he looked at me. Like he was reading things I hadn't even admitted to myself. Like he saw past the boxes and the rings and the polite small talk. And then he walked over. Slowly. Deliberately. He reached for another box right next to me. Our shoulders touched. Just slightly. But it sent a ripple through me I couldn't explain. My breath caught. He turned his head, so close now, and asked, almost a whisper, "Is this okay?" And I didn't say yes. I just didn't say no. I should have stood up. Created distance. Changed the subject. Laughed it off. Instead, I stayed sitting. Frozen in that space between fear and wanting. He didn't move, not really. Just stood there beside me. Close enough that I could hear the shift in his breath. The softest exhale, steady and slow, like he knew the effect he was having on me. And maybe worse, he did. I could feel the warmth of him. Not touching me, but close enough that my skin reacted anyway. That dangerous kind of proximity. The kind that makes your body lean without permission. We unpacked a few more things. Quietly. Like we were pretending this was still normal. But my hands kept shaking. I dropped a mug, nearly broke it. He caught it midair with reflexes that made me flinch. "Careful," he said, voice low. "Some things are more fragile than they look." Was he talking about the mug? Or me? I nodded, swallowing hard. I couldn't meet his eyes. Because I knew what mine were saying. And then, just when the silence stretched too long, He walked to the window. "This light," he said, half to himself. "You glow in it." My breath caught. I turned to say something, but the words tangled. What do you even say when someone says something like that? Something so simple. And so dangerous? He wasn't even looking at me anymore. He just stood there, watching the street below like none of this meant anything. But it did. It meant everything. The quiet got louder. My heart felt like it was filling the whole room. And that's when I heard the lock click. My husband's key. The door opened. And suddenly I was standing, stepping back. Too fast, too guilty. Like my body knew I had crossed something invisible. He looked at me once before leaving. Just one glance. But it said all the things we didn't. He came in with takeout and a tired smile. "Hey babe. Brought dinner," he said, completely unaware of how loud the silence had been just seconds before. I forced a smile. Too wide. Too fast. "Thanks," I managed, stepping forward, taking the bag like it was a lifeline. My neighbor, he nodded politely, said something casual, forgettable. "Nice meeting you, man." And then he left. No one knew. Not really. But I did. I stood there holding Thai food like it was going to anchor me to the version of my life I was supposed to be living. And all I could feel was the echo of heat still buzzing under my skin. Dinner was quiet. He talked about work. Deadlines. Some coworker I'd never liked. And I just nodded, barely tasting the food, my mind stuck on that moment, his breath behind me, his voice in that window-lit room. Later, when my husband showered, I stood at the sink staring at the last unwashed plate. My reflection in the kitchen window looked tired but not sorry. I should have felt guilty. I should have scrubbed it off me like soap and shame. But what I felt was awake. Like something inside me had been asleep for too long. I couldn't stop thinking about the way he didn't touch me. How I felt it anyway. How it felt more than some hands ever had. A week passed. Maybe more. I tried to forget. But you know how certain people leave fingerprints on your memory? Even when they don't leave a trace. That was him. And then one night I heard a knock. Soft. Late. Almost uncertain. I opened the door. Just a crack. And there he was. Standing in the hallway. Hands in his pockets. Looking at me like he'd been waiting to see if I'd open the door all the way. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just waited. And then he said it, quiet, careful, and far too calm. I haven't stopped thinking about that moment. Have you? I should have closed the door. That would have been the right thing. The safe thing. The thing a married woman does when temptation shows up with soft eyes and a memory that won't die. But I didn't. I stepped back. Just once. Just enough. And he walked in. The hallway light spilled around him, casting long shadows across the floor. He stood there, hands still tucked in his pockets like he was trying not to touch anything. Like he knew one wrong move would shatter whatever fragile line we were pretending not to cross. I didn't ask why he came. We both knew. "I couldn't sleep," he said quietly. "I kept seeing your face. That day." My throat tightened. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." He looked around like he was trying to memorize the room, or maybe searching for proof of the man who lived there. The man who shared my bed but hadn't looked at me like this in years. "I'm not trying to cause problems," he said, voice barely above a whisper. I felt something. And I think you did too." I sat on the armrest of the couch. The silence was thick, not awkward but heavy, like it had been waiting for us to notice it. "You didn't touch me," I said. He nodded. "I didn't have to." I looked at him then, really looked. He wasn't the kind of beautiful that's obvious. Not magazine perfect. But there was something about the way he stood. The stillness. The restraint. Like he could destroy me but wouldn't. Unless I asked him to. And maybe, in some part of me I didn't want to name. I already had. "I think about it too," I whispered. The air changed. He took one slow step forward. Then another. His voice dropped low and sure. "Tell me to leave, and I will." I didn't. I just closed my eyes. And in that split second of silence, I felt his hand not on me but near me. Hovering. Waiting. Almost touching. His hand hovered there. Inches from my shoulder, and somehow it felt more intimate than anything that had come before. I didn't move. Not away. Not closer. Just stayed in the stillness, letting the weight of everything unsaid settle between us. My breath came shallow, like my body was trying to stay quiet, afraid any sound would break the spell or make it real. And maybe that's why he didn't touch me, because not touching was more powerful, more cruel, more honest. I keep trying to forget that moment, I said finally. But every time I do, it comes back stronger. He nodded, slowly, like he understood too well. I shouldn't be here, he said. But you are. We didn't speak after that. Not for a while. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was loaded, tense. His eyes moved across my face like he was memorizing something he shouldn't have access to. My hair, my mouth, the hollow of my throat. And then he exhaled, like he'd been holding something in for too long. You're not happy, he said, not as a question but a truth. I see it in your eyes. That hurt. Not because it wasn't true, but because he saw it before I ever admitted it to myself. And somehow being seen like that made me want to fall apart in his arms. I stood up slowly. Close now. Almost touching. If I ask you to stay, I whispered. What does that make me? He didn't answer. Just step closer. I felt it then, the heat between us. Like static, like something wild and barely contained. My skin was humming. Every inch of me ached with wanting. But we didn't move. Not yet. I'm not going to kiss you, he said. I know. And you're not going to stop thinking about this. I didn't deny it. His breath touched my cheek. My eyes fluttered closed. We stood there, almost touching lips, not moving. Like two people on the edge of something they already knew they'd fall into. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. The moment held us, suspended in that unbearable closeness, breath to breath, until even time seemed afraid to move. And then he stepped back. Just one step. But it felt like a door slamming shut inside me. I should go, he said, his voice rough like it hurt to say the words. I nodded. But I didn't want him to. Not really. He turned toward the door and I followed without thinking. My fingers grazed his, barely a touch, but it sent a shiver through both of us. His hand hovered like he might reach for mine. Like he'd ask one more time if this was what I wanted. But he didn't. He just looked at me. A long final look that felt like a memory being written in real time. Then he left. And the door closed with a soft click that echoed louder than any fight, any confession. I stood there, alone in the half-light of the living room. The quiet pressing in like a secret I didn't know how to carry. I didn't cry. I didn't pace or scream or fall apart. I just stood there, one hand against the door, feeling everything that didn't happen, and everything that almost did. Later that night, my husband held me in bed. His arm draped across my waist. Familiar. Heavy. A weight I couldn't decide was comfort or cage. He asked if I was okay. I said yes. And I hated how easily the lie came. But I couldn't sleep. Not with the ghost of someone else's breath still warm on my skin. I kept hearing his voice, the way he said my name like it meant something. I should have been relieved that nothing happened. But all I could feel was the ache of almost. And the terrifying truth that part of me didn't want it to be over. I never saw him again. Not really. He still lived down the hall. I'd hear his door sometimes, hear his footsteps when the hallway echoed just right. But we never spoke. Never touched. And somehow that silence was louder than anything he ever said. Weeks passed. Then months. Life folded back into its routine, dishes, errands, small talk with a man who loved me. Just not in the way I needed. He never suspected. I was careful. Too careful. But not because I was hiding betrayal. I was hiding what could have been. And honestly, that's worse. Sometimes I catch myself standing by the window at dusk, when the light hits the same way it did that day. And I wonder if he remembers it too. If his hands ever ache from holding back. If he regrets not touching me. Or if he's proud he didn't. Because me? I don't know. I tell myself I did the right thing. That I protected something sacred. But there's a part of me, the part that comes alive at night when the world is quiet and honest, that still burns for that moment. Still plays it back in slow motion. The way he looked at me. The way we breathed in sync. The way the air between us felt charged with every possibility we didn't take. People think betrayal lives in action. But sometimes it lives in silence. In the electricity of what didn't happen. In the way someone can touch your soul without ever laying a hand on you. And the truth? I think he carried more than just those boxes that day. He carried a version of me I didn't know still existed. The woman who still wanted, still felt, still believed in that spark you can't fake. And even now, I feel her flicker. Every time I pass his door. Every time I remember that I almost let go. Of everything. For something that never even happened. But almost did.